You are going to be applying to Oxford or Cambridge and you want to know which college should you apply to. Fair enough. Which one should you apply to? They're just a bunch of weird Latin names, right? Maybe wrong. My name's Jamin. I studied mathematics at the University of Oxford from 2018 to 2022, and now I help students all across the globe who are looking to study mathematics at Oxbridge, and over 80% of the students I work with end up securing offers. Today I'm going to be talking about which college you should apply to, and this is a pretty big question, a pretty open question, lots of different ways to answer this, but there are definitely some really important things to consider. The first thing, and probably the most useful thing, the most overall thing that most people who are at Oxbridge would agree with, is which college you end up at, whichever college you end up at, you end up saying is your favourite. So if you applied to college X, but instead you got into college Y, and you, whilst you were applying, you were saying, no, I want to study college X is my dream college, blah, 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 and you end up getting into college Y, you'll probably say, actually, you know what, college Y is for me, because you'll meet your best friends there, some of the friends that you'll take with you to the rest of your life. And sure enough, if you'd gone to college X, you probably would have met some other people who would have been the friends, your friends for life. But at college Y, you wouldn't have realised that, and at college X, you wouldn't have realised about your friends at college Y. So the main thing to remember is it actually doesn't really matter which college you end up at from that point of view. Now, that being said, it's not to say that you should just put in an open application and apply anywhere, or just apply to a random college. First things first, it sounds stupid, but oh my gosh, how many students don't do this, is check if your college offers your course. I'm just going to say it once, it's so obvious. Go on the website, check if you're applying to study mathematics, does that college that you've researched into actually offer it? If it doesn't, there's no point of, even doing any further research into that college. Cool, past the dummy stage. What other things should you consider when making a college choice? First things first is accommodation. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Does the college give you accommodation for the duration of your course? Some colleges do, some colleges don't. So at Christchurch, at Oxford, they give you accommodation for the 4 years of your integrated master's. So if I did maths, the integrated master's, a 4-year degree, they gave me accommodation for the 4 years I was there, which is great. That's what I wanted, that's great. Some students actually kind of like the idea that some colleges force you out, kick you out, because then you get to live in a house with some mates, you kind of get maybe a bit more independence, you've got to worry about bills and rent and maybe a bit more onus on cooking, whereas for me, Christchurch gave me a meal every single day. And so that was something I was quite enjoyed. So it kind of is more a personal thing, what you personally prefer. Obviously, one thing to remember is obviously you've got a lot of time pressure when you're at Oxford. It's a crammed 8-week term, same at Cambridge, where you've got to be doing lots of work. So for me, for example, food was like, okay, cool. If that's one less thing I have to worry about, great. That way I can focus a bit more on my studies there. So that would probably be one thing I'd very heavily recommend you take into account. Before I continue on to my other bits of advice regarding college choice, as I mentioned earlier, over 80% of the students I work with end up receiving offers from Oxbridge. So if you're considering applying to study maths at Oxbridge in the next couple of months, do get in touch, link in the description below. Anyway, let's move on to the second thing you should consider is distance. So I'm not going to be talking too much about metric spaces here, and that's something you'll learn about in second year, but distance. How close is the college that you're considering applying to from the maths department? Now, this shouldn't be the only thing you take into account, because obviously if this video goes out to thousands of people, everyone who's applying to study maths at Oxford will probably apply to either Somerville or St Anne's, because those are right next to the maths department. That's something to consider, but maybe you also want to consider distance to the city centre. Maybe that's where you want to be. So at Oxford, Christchurch is basically one of the colleges. There's quite a few colleges in the city centre, so all the shops were there. Anything that was going on was generally in the city centre, so I was always quite close to everything. Everything was in walking distance. Cambridge, I'm less familiar with the geography for. I know it's a bit more of a spread out city, but certainly you might want to be quite near, like for example, King's College down that main road. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, that's something to consider. Maybe also the distance to the sports centre. So if you quite like sports, you might be at the sports centre quite a lot. So maybe you want to think of a college which would house you somewhere near there. Those are just very small things to consider, but things to consider nonetheless when you're making your application. Because at the end of the day, it is 3-4 years that you're going to be at university. So the time that you spend travelling will add up over time. So that's something else you should consider. One thing that would say that you shouldn't consider, and this is a trap that lots of students fall into, is statistics. And you find this especially with students from backgrounds where there actually isn't that much information, that much support. And that's actually kind of why I want to make these videos, is to give as much support to students online, because that's a community where everyone has access to. You don't have to know certain people, you don't have to go to a certain school. And what I find with some students who maybe don't have so much information, or worse still, they have access to bad information, is they think that the statistics really make a difference. So if college X admits 0.2% more students than college Y, they should choose college X. Or they fall into the trap of going, oh, everyone's going to choose college X, so I'm going to choose college Y. Or everyone's going to think to choose college X, so they're going to choose college Y, so I'm going to choose college X. It's just a bunch of nonsense. At the end of the day, if you're going to get into Oxford, college X, you're going to get into college Y with 99.9% certainty. Obviously, with any application process where there are humans involved, there's going to be an element of bias, but that bias is completely, subconscious bias. And that's something you cannot prepare for, you cannot change. That's it. The game is the game. But you should not choose a college purely over a statistic. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about it. You shouldn't choose a college over a statistic like that. Even if it was 3%, 4% more, where it's starting to get significant, at the end of the day, it's a statistic. And I'm going to go back to that fact I said earlier. If you're not going to get into college X, you're not going to get into college Y. If you're going to get into college X, you're going to get into college Y. Enough said. Okay, what else should you consider? I would also say the size of the college. That's also something that's important. Do you want a big college, or a big both geographically, physically, but also in terms of the number of students they admit, not just math students, but just students altogether. You're going to make loads of friends, and hopefully make friends outside of mathematicians, and maybe you want to have a large cohort of students from which you can kind of select your friends. Or equally, maybe you want a smaller college where everyone knows everyone, or it's a bit more of a community family feel. Again, that's down to a personal preference. That's not me saying you should choose one or the other. I opted for Christchurch because it's quite a big college. It takes in quite a lot of students every single year, so I knew I'd meet a bunch of people who could be friends, people who I could network with, people who I could learn from, those sorts of things. So that was one of the things I quite liked about Christchurch, but again, it's personal preference. The biggest thing, and this is going to make me sound maybe pretty young and hip, is you want to get a good vibe for the place. You want to kind of get a good feel for the college you go to. Now, I guess this isn't really accessible for everyone, but if you're in the UK, try and visit the college. Even if you're in Europe, if you're coming to the UK for a week, for a weekend, whatever, try and visit the college you want to apply for, because you will be surprised by how much a vibe can be. So when I was applying to Oxford and Cambridge, I was visited both Oxford and Cambridge, and I ended up applying to Oxford. I visited Corpus Christi at Cambridge, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I just didn't get a good feel for the college. That's nothing against the college. I'm sure it's a great college, and I'm sure the student staff, everything there is fine. It was just personally, I was like, okay, I visited Christchurch, I think, already by that point, and I was like, oh, Christchurch just seems to tick more boxes. There was a little more certainty about Christchurch. It just felt like the better place for me to apply to, and that's essentially why I applied to Christchurch at Oxford. If you apply to so going to a college to kind of get a feel for it is, I think, a very valuable thing, and I don't really know how better to describe that, but you'll just get a good vibe. You'll meet some of the professors, meet some of the students. Likelihood is, if you go to the open days, the people at the open days will be first or second year mathematicians, so they'll be a year or maybe 2 years ahead of you. So you'll probably be quite good friends with them when you get there and study there anyway. So it's a pretty good chance to meet them. So I know over the summer, and certainly in like September and stuff, I'll have loads of open days, lots of access events, those sorts of things. So make the most of it. If it's the case that maybe getting to the UK is hard on those specific days, send an email to the college, send an email to the maths department. They genuinely want you to make the right choice of applying to that university. They want to make sure you're making an educated choice. They want to make sure everything is in your hands as the applicant, and they will make space for you to come and visit Go and walk around the college. Go and speak to the maths professors, the tutors, those sorts of things. That they will make that a possibility for you. Just reach out to them. So that's in particular to students who maybe aren't from the UK, and it's a little bit more difficult to just take a train down on a Saturday morning. If you're from Europe, maybe you have to fly over, whatever. Or if you're from outside of Europe, maybe it's an even longer journey. Some colleges will also have virtual tours where they basically film, and it's almost like a VR thing. You can walk around, whatever. They have virtual open days, those sorts of things. Just have a look at the college websites. That would be how I would select a college. So to give you a summary, I've been waffling on for a while. Don't worry about statistics. I cannot stress that enough. If you're not going to get into college X, you're not going to get into college Y. Choose the things that work for you. So do they give you accommodation? Oh, one thing I didn't mention was food. Some colleges do give you food, like dinners, every single day. Some will only give you dinners on certain days. Some will also have breakfasts and lunches as well. Those sorts of things. So that's another thing to consider. And again, is that what you want? Maybe you really love cooking and you don't want to have food from hall every day. You want to be forced to cook. Whatever. Cool. That's fine. Does your college then apply give you cooking facilities? Some will, some won't. Again, things to look into. Distances, how close is it from the maths department, the sports centre, the city centre, whatever else. If your mate is really insistent on applying to Wadham College, maybe you want to apply to Wadham College for that reason, or maybe you don't want to apply to Wadham for that reason. These are just things to consider, but notice that none of them are really general bits of advice. They're more personal and specific bits of advice down to you. And the biggest tip I could say is check out the college, see the vibe you get from the place. And that's really it. And what you'll find is you'll find a college and you go, you know what, that's pretty good. And the way I chose Christchurch, maybe you're wondering, is I had no idea what Oxford colleges were, as in like the difference between them. Some people do, somehow, maybe their parents went to Oxbridge, or maybe they know people who study here. I didn't even know. All I knew is Oxford had a college system. Couldn't even name you a single college. Went onto the website, was scrolling through, had ruled out the ones that didn't offer maths, saw Christchurch, clicked on it, was like, oh, pretty buildings, looks like Harry Potter. Okay, cool, very nice. Book an open day. It was as simple as that. Went to visit them on the open day. I was like, this is really nice. And if I'd done that with a different college, let's say Christchurch hadn't come as early on in the alphabetical order as it does, and I'd maybe gone to St Hugh's and had a look around and gone, oh, it's still a pretty nice college. Let's apply there. And in fact, I'd go so far as even to say for Cambridge as well. I said I visited Corpus Christi and didn't get as good a vibe from it, but it was still like fine. I was still like, okay, cool, I could easily see myself studying here. And I always say this, if I'd accidentally on my UCAS clicked Cambridge instead of Oxford, I wouldn't have been upset. And I genuinely mean that. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm very, very happy that I studied at Oxford, applied there, and I intentionally applied there, I clicked the right button on my UCAS form. But both universities, both the colleges that I'd visited, they both seem very, very strong. And if I had clicked the other college, I'd have been like, oh, that's a shame. Oh well, I'm still going to love it. That's my advice. If you do want some more advice, go and check out some of my other videos. So I'll leave one on screen now where I talk about my best advice for the MAT, which I imagine some of you are sitting. And if you do want some additional support, do get in touch. My link is in the description below. Over 80% of my students end up receiving offers from Oxbridge. I'll catch you in the next video.